Today is a special day. We're going to experience another individual today, someone that might have similar accusations about where they were brought up from that never hold true. You know, yeah, we might be able to drive 20 minutes and see corn in any direction, but that's not what our life is about. There's actually indoor plumbing here. We have modern amenities. And a lot of times, our guest today might hear similar aspects about where she lives. We may get into that a little bit, but we're good, earthy folk, full of life and vinegar. And this guest today, she is full of vinegar. A mama bear, willing to protect her children at anything, as I've seen on YouTube. Not afraid to voice her opinion on anyone's thoughts or opinions of herself also. Today may be a day that I get put in my place. I may get checked. Sit down. Be humble, fool. Because the Appalachian Oracle is coming at you today on
Appalachian.
Hey,
already you're put in your place, buddy.
That's how we say it in Nebraska.
You don't live. You don't have the Appalachian. You don't get to decide what it's
We're
called.
flat. We have no hills. As you can see, I'm already getting sitting down and being humble. A big Kendrick fan here with us on Drop the Stones.
Hi, I'm Candy.
And I'm Dan.
And you're listening to Drop the Stones,
A weekly podcast brought to you by Trump. No. We saw a comedian. We had a date night last night.
No.
We saw Chad Daniels, the comic. He was up in Omaha last night, and he described Trump as having tip of dick sucking lips. So buttery and pillowy that you just want to put the tip of your dick on them lips.
God.
We've been demonetized on YouTube already.
Good thing we're not at the monetized level.
Sarah, how you doing?
Oh my God. Well, his lack of lips make it look like God tried to sew his mouth shut. So I don't know. Like looks like there was supposed to be a seam there, and it just didn't make it.
Yeah, that very much could be true. How are you doing this evening, Sarah?
I am great. How are you all?
Oh, fantastic.
Good. You want to introduce who she is?
You want to, or you want me to?
You too.
You too. Well, Sarah, I've seen on TikTok. I can't speak tonight. I should probably be drinking more. And just following her videos.
Seth could help you out.
I don't ever want to be compared to that man again. So anyways, I've been following her on TikTok, and it just amuses me when I see her and a comment comes across on one of her posts, and she just comes to the core.
If you comment on her post is what you're saying.
Sarah, there's been a couple times I've commented on some of your posts, and then I see Oracle has replied to your comment. I'm like, oh shit.
I guess.
And then I
guess it works.
I passed.
Say something. Was this offensive?
So, like most of our guests, we kind of met, and we actually kind of scheduled this before the first TikTok ban because I was getting nervous, and I wanted to have you on because I just thought you'd be a great personality to have on here and share your story. I think it's going to be a fascinating trip tonight, and it is going to be a ride, I have a feeling. So, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and all that? Because I'm sure there was no religious background in the mountain areas that you were in.
No, not at all. Religion has really nothing to do with Appalachia. No, not at all. So my name is Sarah Brown, and I am from West Virginia. That is its own state. Do not ask me if I'm from Richmond because I will light someone up.
Do you have a picture of John Denver anywhere in your house?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, there goes that myth.
No, because we love that song, but it's really about Maryland. Like when he talks, we always joke about that. But it's like, there's aspects to the song, but we're like, oh well, we still love it. But and I love the fact I've been to Ireland, and we were in a pub, just like walk in, and they're asking us where we're from, and I'm like, I'm from West Virginia, and of course I'm like, I'm in another country, people won't like have to know anybody's individual states, like whatever. And they're like, West Virginia. And I was like, country roads. And they break out into song.
Oh,
like,
wow.
I was like, yes. But anyway, West Virginia, small state on the East Coast, the one that looks like this.
Yeah.
It does look like that.
Backwards. Sorry, it's Zoom, right? So I grew up here, but I'm from down here, and I live here now. WVU is up here.
There we go. We got it. The map of West Virginia.
Yeah.
But my family has lived in West Virginia. I've got ancestry that it's been here since the mid to late 1500s.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no kidding.
So the culture here is very much embedded in, I think, who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That being said, I totally acknowledge that this is not our land. And so, my family's been here that long, but this place does not belong to us.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of West Virginians will kind of even acknowledge that. And even in our culture, we very much value our environment. And it's because our environment has been part of our survival and our struggle in regards to the chronic poverty and lack of resources that we experience here. I grew up poor. I will say that a lot. I've been to a lot of public speaking events nationally, and I will use that word occasionally across various parts of the United States. And people always seem to get tensed up about it. And I asked about it once. And they were like, well, we really shy away from words like that. I was like, well, if you're offended that I was poor, I just want you to know, so am I. So now when I say that, I always acknowledge that. But because it's something I've lived, it's to me, yes, it's offensive, but I also had to experience it.
Yeah.
And so are there people here that are poorer than me? And yes, absolutely. Yeah. But I don't look upon them as some type of moral failing, because something that is vastly different in Appalachia here is that we have a community mindset as opposed to an individualistic mindset.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, that is huge.
Because I think that says more about the individual that's uncomfortable with it. Because
absolutely,
I don't want to recognize this. I don't want to acknowledge it. I don't want to have to experience this because, that's so bad. But it's like, fuck you. I've been there. I know it. I understand it. It's my life. I'm fine with it. It's almost.
It's part of what's made me who I am, instead of saying like it's. It's
because we moralize it.
Yes.
And I blame
that
the
is
Christian
true.
church for that. I blame the church for that. And that actually, kind of like clouded my experience growing up. My mom grew up a bit more connected, a bit more, had more resources than my dad. But my dad's family was chronically poor. And as it has been told to me through family things, he was working at a place but was hurt. And there was some discrepancy of where he was hurt or how he was hurt, and whether or not that should have been charged to the place he was working at. I don't know any details about it, but he died before he could collect on it.
Oh, wow.
And then what was left from when my grandmother passed away, my father and his sister fought over it. And so we don't have the generational wealth that a lot of people have because of scarcity and chronic poverty here. Anytime anyone is left something, it literally it doesn't last. There isn't anything to continue often. And so I just remember growing up knowing we were poor, and we were even somewhat a bit more financially stable than my parents had grown up like. But because of that chronic scarcity mindset, they behaved as if we were poor all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then treated us as such.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think, and I could be way off, but from my understanding of that area of the country, there were resources and there was potential for wealth, but it was the mining companies that came in and pillaged it all,
and the railroad companies.
Yeah, which almost speaks to the dynamics of the country of a whole. As you see the wealth disparity increasing, that it's these certain individuals that want to pillage the whole country and have everyone else be subject to them and barely get enough to survive. So I think you might have a unique perspective on that for the whole country.
We're considered a colonial economy in West Virginia because after the Civil War, and this is why I don't identify as Southern, because West Virginia seceded from the Confederacy to become a state, with Abraham Lincoln, and by doing that, we became part of the Union.
Yep.
It was because we have such a mountainous terrain. Plantations were not something that was successful here.
Yeah.
And with state representation, we didn't get a lot of representation from the western part of the state. And where, I believe it was Thomas Jefferson in the Virginia, if that's correct, I could be wrong with the individual specifically, but I remember reading that the representation in the southern part of Virginia at the time wanted education to be paid for, but only for the elites. And from the very beginning, the western part of the state wanted education for everyone free through elementary school.
Wow.
And so, and it's not that racism does not exist here, because it totally does. But the state has not benefited. And I say that because that's why the plantations were such a focus in the South, was because those people benefited from owning individuals, that free labor that, is what our capitalistic society was based on. West Virginia, what existed and currently existed as West Virginia, didn't have that benefit or that motivation, which is why there was an ability to side with the Union. And it was because there was already chronic issues with lack of access because of the terrain. After the Civil War, people had coal mines and things like that, but they already were under-resourced. So them owning these natural whatever, it wasn't something that was even possible for them with a tiny farm. Coal companies came in, bought up the land, bought up the resources, and then started telling farmers, you can sell your farm and come work for the coal company, and you can come live on our land and we'll pay you, and you can shop at our stores and do all of that, which is an awful lot like those Tesla sites that Musk seems to talk about, right? Sounds like it's coal town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, those don't work out very well.
No.
Wow.
It's not a good idea. Warning, wrong way. Kendrick said it. We cannot do that. And so we have not had that stability, but at the same time, our culture seems to be it's influenced by indigenous culture. We had enslaved individuals who, after the Civil War and migrated north. We had individuals that were living here that were working in the coal mines, and it's what led a lot to the coal mining, the mine wars. If you have ever read about that, we had the military drop bombs on us during the early 1900s because our coal miners revolted. It's what started unionization and labor movements across the United States. And, without a unity, and it, like I said, it doesn't mean racism doesn't exist here, but there's that community mentality that once you are absorbed into the community, you are one of the community. And it was because of that unity, they had to bring the military in to disarm us because we had such an uprising. And this is what they don't want people to know. This is why you were not taught this in school. That's when you have OSHA and workers' rights. And it's because of West Virginian workers that had enough. All they were wanting was education and the bare necessities to survive. We have counties right now that don't have clean water.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like those are real things. We've got areas that are food deserts. We don't have we have grocery stores that don't have like fresh vegetable, and that is a common thing, not something that is because of the current
situations or
climate. Yes. And so we've had a colonial economy here from the start because of companies coming in, being predatory, buying up the land, buying up the resources, and there is no incentive for them to stay and cultivate the community. And that's what keeps people here in poverty, because they underfund education to force people to go into the workforce. And if we're undereducated, they will undervalue you, pay you bare minimum, and then pull resource out at any time. It's almost like the supply and demand. And if you're solely dependent on whatever that one or two industries are that services your legislature, for example, with lobbying, then you will be forced to take those underpaying jobs if you want to stay. Not that there's any ability for you to move, because who could afford that?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It's a sad thing that should be just shown to the world that this is what these current plans are leading to. This is, if we keep proceeding down the same road and keep spreading out the wealth, this is what it's going to look like for everyone. And yet,
they do, but they use that as like their scapegoat. So Republicans and Democrats use Appalachia as the scapegoat for why nobody can get anything done, because they can't explain to everyone why we are poor. Because if they did that, they would have to acknowledge that the American dream is not real.
Yeah, exactly. And good point.
That is a very good point.
So what you see about Appalachia and the chronic poverty is often like intertwined with like movies like What Wrong Way, or whatever the weird movies are that make fun of West Virginia and, hillbillies and things like that, think about the tropes that you hear. Talk about, these, they choose to be ignorant, or they choose to be secluded. And there are instances, I mean, we do choose to be secluded. That is a benefit of living where we live. That being said, though, that doesn't mean we don't have access to the outside world, but it is because they need other things to explain why we can't function, or why we do not function like the rest of the country. It really is because we have to depend on community, or we would not survive. And we are different because we look at other people and care about them person to person, regardless of what anybody posts on Facebook around here. If I confronted them in person and then needed something, they could hate my guts, and still many of them could not stand to see me struggle. And it's because we share that, because we wouldn't be able to make it otherwise.
Wow, that's if the world could just take that, or our nation mostly could take that, like community. This is because if you go into religion, or which a lot of they're tied together, right? Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, if you don't agree with me, then I'll just cut you out. You're just different than me. And that's why you have all these different, types of Christianity. But you can disagree. You can hate each other's guts to an extent, but not watch each other suffer. Like, you're part of the community. If I help you, it helps out all of us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think, though, with the toxic individuality that has been rampant within the United States because of capitalism and elitism and all the other isms, that has been embedded within American Christianity, to where we've moralized poverty as a way to justify not helping people who are in poverty, or trying to look down on them and say, well, they have this or this, so that either they can't be that poor, or they won't make this. They want to see sacrifices made from individuals that they could have no conceptualization of their life to justify or warrant their help.
Yeah, that's true.
So we have something, in that way. But it's also this embedded feeling of not ever feeling good enough.
Oh, yeah.
That is within that Christianity, that whole situation.
And that's the
in-group, out-group type of thing. I think
us versus them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then was always the saying growing up that if a sinner couldn't go to church, where can they go? Right. So it's not that you can't, we say broken people, and we all are broken people.
Yeah.
But it's kind of this idea of you know, we're taught to love our neighbor as ourselves, but if we chronically hate ourselves,
Exactly. Yes.
because we are taught that we're not good enough, that God, we didn't earn any salvation, and like we should be so thankful, right? Then when we go to love our neighbor as ourselves,
there's a lot of self-hate.
And I don't know if you were taught this, but I was taught I'm an enemy of God. And when you're an enemy of God, then if the person who doesn't believe like you, they're an enemy of God. So they're just like, they deserve hell, basically.
Right.
That's, we deserved hell is what we were taught. Wow. Yep. That's.
And so like, you know, we there should be this concept, like in my mind growing up, I was taught all of these things about Christ and the things that he did unapologetically, the things that, you know, that doing the right thing was not popular. Yeah. And so when I hear justification about this type of behavior, and really this kind of was huge in my deconstruction, was Trump running for office and me seeing what was supposed to be my faith, supporting him. Yeah. And then me thinking like, I was raised that, you know, people by the fruits of their labor, and this guy's fruit is rotten.
Yes.
How in the world are we justifying this man? And then like molding, I think, Dan, you had said in a TikTok recently, like molding what current American evangelicalism has portrayed as a Jesus, because they're pissed that he like let himself die at the hands of the Romans.
Yeah.
And now he's this like, you know, villain that's come back to like, you know, vengeance is mine. Like through Donald Trump. Like, and so I remember like watching this and thinking like, you know, feeling like my faith had been stolen, but then having to come to the realization that I didn't believe, I wasn't in what I thought I was in.
Yes, that is something like, I'm like, I was a different type. I mean, I don't call myself a Christian. I do follow Jesus' teachings. I love Jesus of Nazareth, not white American Jesus, but it's like, I was a different type of Christian. There's no way I would vote for this guy. Like, I don't understand my family being like, yay, he's the greatest guy. I'm just like,
I was embedded in it. I campaigned for George W. I didn't vote for a Democratic presidential candidate until Donald Trump ran for office.
Oh, really? My first one was Obama.
I never even voted for Obama. I regret it. I regret not because but I, looking back, right? And so, no, like, but I remember like, it, like I'd never voted. I've always been a registered independent, but I had never been a straight ticket voter. It drove me nuts to have straight ticket voters. West Virginia was a blue state up until about 10 years ago. Jim Justice, who is now our senator, was our governor and ran for governor as a Democrat. And so that's why when people talk about like, oh, Appalachia, these people vote against their best interests. First of all, I need everyone to know these are two sides to the same coin. No, just because you vote blue does not mean you are morally superior to other people. You still have to unpack your shit.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
You're still racist.
Yep.
You are still elitist. Yep. You are still all of these things. You voting blue does not absolve you of your participation in that system.
Yeah. Yes.
So like, you know, people run to blue because they're like, you know, the red did, you know, whatever. And then I remember even being in, you know, heavily in Christianity and then seeing how, you know, these liberals would act. Me judging them. And I'll never forget being in a professor's class and seeing her act, but then realizing immediately that my behavior as a conservative was very similar.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And then being like, oh my God. Like, I was just like, what? And then realizing like here, Democrats ruled forever, even during all of the union. And they were like, we're here for the American worker. We know better. We know better. But Republicans, not any different. Actually, right now, they're like way worse. Yeah. And so like, you know, they want to, you know, we're the party of Lincoln. Well, no, you weren't. But then also like, what does it matter when you're acting like this now?
Yes, exactly. You don't get to just cling to that. Yeah.
No. But they're at the heart of it, no matter what party they're for, if you are party over people, you are always in the wrong.
Yeah.
And take any type of backing from a corporation because they want better benefit and it's going to cost your people anything, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why, but it's almost like we turn our heads towards what Christian tenets are actually talking about. And then trying to circumvent like the impact it has on people.
I know. I don't know.
Embedding that in our law later so that we can try to say that it's for Christian narrative when really it's just to colonize, continue to colonize.
Yes.
It's like you said, it's two sides of the same coin. So you have the Democrats saying that they're for the people, for the worker, we're going to be pro-union, all this, that means just as much as a Republican saying we're pro-life and we're pro-birth and all this. I guarantee you there's as many Republican senators having abortions as there are Democrats out there. And
absolutely. Because if the Democrats were better, why do we have any poverty?
Yeah,
If
exactly.
the Democrats were any better, they wouldn't have just social programs. It wouldn't be just looking at the how and putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. They would be looking at the why and fixing it. But they don't, because they benefit from it not.
Yeah, exactly.
How does that make them any better? It doesn't.
No.
The why
and as a West Virginian, this is what has layered my perception of the world. Because I'm like, they're all bad.
Yeah.
The why of the problem doesn't line their pockets.
Yeah.
No.
Because the people up on top want to keep it this way because we're
they can run on it. Yeah, it can get.
They need a crisis to provide solutions so that they don't look incompetent.
Yeah.
Because if anybody operated in their jobs like they do, they wouldn't have any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's as true as it can get. But I mean, you can't.
Do you know how bad I want to be like, you're fired?
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, I wish we could do that.
And just look at the people that are in office. How many of them have no knowledge of common people life? We have a state senator right now that's a multimillionaire that runs TD Ameritrade.
Yeah.
How does he relate to me as a regular worker, full-time job, punching the clock every day and going in and out? He doesn't. No. He's on the golf course. He's flying around on his jets and everything like that.
Yeah,
he doesn't understand my plight.
You have a few years ago, I broke my leg. I walked around on that leg for 10 days, hoping it would just heal because I'm thinking, I didn't know it was broken. I was hoping it was just sprained really bad because the cost was in my head. Like, this is going to cost a lot. I'm going to not be able to work. I mean, all these things. And then I finally went. But you know what? They don't have to think about those things. They can just, I mean, a lot of them, they get free health care, don't they, most of the time?
Well, no, they have a better health care program through the government.
I bet you some of those.
Because they vote on their own programs. So they're going to serve their own interest at the taxpayer's expense, and they're going to have the best programs out there. It's like Trump trying to relate grocery prices to, groceries. I heard about them. That's, you get it's like, you're
he's
an
like,
idiot.
I heard you go to the grocery store. I'm like,
you've never shopped a day in your life. You don't know what it's like. So you don't know what it's like picking up the Great Value and comparing it to the name brand and being like, nah, it really isn't that different. And it's 50 cents cheaper. I can get that. So
I think moralizing poverty, we have been taught and conditioned to look at people like that and say, because they're wealthy, they must make good decisions, because we've been taught that because we're poor. And I will say for anybody listening, if a $500 expense would decimate your finances, congratulations, you're poor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It reminds,
if an unexpected expense a $500 unexpected expense would decimate your finances, you are functionally poor.
Yeah, that
there
is
was
true.
The show The Middle. There was an episode on it, and they were struggling one day, and they're like, there's a $500 expense we have. But then they were happy because they realized early in their marriage it was a $25 expense that was decimating them. So they've increased it up to $500 now, so we're winning. It's like,
right. I mean, that's because that's how hard it is to survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I've just read an article the other day, and I had a friend send it to me. She lives in an inner city, she lives in Philadelphia. And I've always loved cities, but I also like space, right? And so, I've always loved that experience. It is more functional to live in a city because there are more resources available. It is more expensive to live in a rural area because you have to pay for what is a public benefit. So then you even have people who are in blue areas like a big city that will look at Appalachia and not understand why we vote a certain way, but they also don't understand that we don't have the social structures with the infrastructure intentionally.
Yeah.
They intentionally do not create the infrastructure here for that.
We have the same problem here because we have two cities in our state, Omaha and Lincoln. The rest of the state's all farmland for the most part. And it's a huge battle of, are we voting red or blue? And we have a separate state, so we split our electoral votes up. So each district could be one vote for the president. So there could be 2 votes for Trump, 1 vote for Harris in this last election. I think is how it turned out, because Omaha went completely blue.
Yeah.
But they want to switch that over to a winner-take-all state, so then all the farmers out west that vote red will override Omaha and Lincoln. And it's just this constant battle, like you're saying, between the rural areas and what they want and everything that's going on, even though they're getting fucked beyond belief. USA Aid that just got dismantled, all these farmers are like, no.
Yes.
That's one of the biggest...
People,
yeah.
Oh, God. They do not understand. They are being indoctrinated to point the finger at other people, to be told that they're the problem, that we don't have X, Y, and Z. And this is one of the things that is a chronic problem in Appalachia. And it is the Appalachia class system, where it's like you look on the people that are just slightly poorer than you so that you can feel better about how shitty your life is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's why, that's why I say, racism still exists. People still look at minority groups. At one point, West Virginia had the highest rate of trans youth per capita in the nation.
Wow.
Okay. And so then the fact that we've got this legislation that's even being discussed, and that we're part of this lawsuit right now to remove 504. But yet, like, we have people here who don't have clean water.
Mm-hmm.
Worried about someone who exists differently than you because of some like morality political thing. And it's because because people here are poor, so they don't care about them either.
Yeah.
And a lot of our politicians are not from the state. They move to the state and then 2 years later become a politician.
And then move to DC. Yeah.
And then they get this lobbying kickback, right? And then people here are just constantly pulled in this, they're just trying to vote for the opposite of what harmed them the last time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why the Republicans are ahead right now. 10 years ago, all blue in our legislature, pretty much. And it was because they're supposed to be here for the worker. And it's been this whole, to me, that's been the greatest struggle, is like saying it is not undocumented immigrants that are coming here. They're not stealing your job, because first of all,
you're not going to do that job. No.
First of all, you're not going to do that job. Oh, we might here. But I'm sorry. You got to crawl in a hole and dig through some coal. Nobody wants that job either. These are terrible working conditions. You are correct. First of all, you're talking about a group of people who do not have any political or social power in this country.
Yeah.
And they're to blame for why you don't have a job. They're that powerful.
Yeah, I know. That's insane.
But then also, why are you not looking at the corporations who are the ones employing them?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're not pointing the finger at the right people.
Yeah.
It's that we're going to be mad at these people right now, so that you don't look at the fact that if you really held us accountable, and then you get people from other parts of the country who are, vote blue, whatever. And that, like I said, they look at our state and go, you vote against your best. You got us here. There's not any more of anything that exists in Appalachia than it does anywhere else.
Yeah.
The problem is that it's hard to reach people here, but it's because those people do not understand how people have had to exist in this area. And how the chronic underfunding of education, even though, yes, these people voted these people in, between the options that we have available, they, again, two sides, same coin. It is not our fault that our legislature chooses to underfund our education system intentionally, so that people are not able to function in their own society and it can be more manipulated. So it's that finger pointing that really, it doesn't get us anywhere at all. But it's that, again, it's the morality of poverty. Yeah. And as somebody who came from the Christian faith, I just remember having so much hope being a Christian, thinking that Jesus hung out with the outcasts and the poor folk, and those of us who were downtrodden, those were the individuals, those were, who Jesus championed.
Yeah.
And then me thinking this is how I want to live. I remember a former mentor of mine asked me, if there was no promise of heaven, would you still be a Christian? And I said, yeah. And he's like, why? And I said, because it's just a good way to live.
Yeah.
I don't care if there's a heaven or hell. It does not matter because I think, dedicating yourself to service of other people, which is, that is connected to my Appalachian culture, because people are so important. We're taught, our human resources are our most important resources. But then to watch it in live contradiction, my faith actively engaging in a way with this politician, it's almost like, I'm like, you change your entire religion to simp for this one orange guy who like 20 years ago you would have hated. You did probably hate and hated the way, but because he says these, but then it's like, if he's saying things that you like, you are not nearly as moral as you think you are.
No, it's the old biblical verse of tickle in the ears.
Well,
you know?
yeah.
Why does that sound appealing? And I keep going back to this, like, they wanted Jesus to be a superhero and not
that is
which
it.
is something I've talked about a lot. Is that's no different than the Jews at the time of Jesus. They were expecting their Savior to come back, to be a military conqueror, and to take the Romans out.
And they would be in charge. That's what they wanted.
He would be a physical king on the planet to overrule all the Romans in the area of the time. What are we looking at now? We have
because they had been harmed, right? They wanted a champion because they had been abused.
Yeah.
As a group of people.
Yes.
And I do relate to that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't when you suffer, because I don't, when you suffer and you go through things, if you sit and you process with it, you don't want harm to come to other people.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so when I hear people like salivating over people being detained or going to Guantanamo Bay, or when they're salivating over, even on the left, about people like fuck around and find out.
Oh, I know.
I don't want harm to come to anyone.
No.
I don't care who they do.
No, that's exactly.
I don't really want harm to come to anyone.
No.
Now, if that's something that they are supposed to have as a form of restorative justice, then that's something that may have to happen.
But you don't have to take delight in it. You can just be like, that's just a consequence that happens, and I would relieve it if I could for you. Yeah.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, as coming from the Christian faith and someone who supports community, even those people who voted to support this, if they're in crisis, I will still help them.
And I've done posts on that too. I was like, I'm not going to I don't want anybody to hurt because of what's happened, the mess that we're in.
But at the end of the day, I do want them to remember who was there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And remember why.
Yeah.
And it's because to me, that is living Christ.
Exactly. And that is the kind of stuff that can change minds.
Yeah.
If they see that's, hey, you believe very differently and yet you're being kind, and you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. That's, that's almost the only way you're going to change any minds, I think, is just by being consistently loving.
Yeah. And we've done posts on that before of, when these people finally wake up and their eyes are open and the scales are removed, like Paul on the road to Damascus, someone's got to be there. And I did a post not too long ago about this with the deconstruction community of, you've been there. You know the trauma that comes from deconstruction, the persecution, the separation, you're that person now. We can't deal with you. We're going to shun you. You're out of community. We need to be the ones that have experienced this to come along to these people that finally open up and see it, to come and pick them up and carry them along and guide them through this deconstruction period, because it's a son of a bitch to do right off the bat, because you're like, you're treading water. You don't know where to go. You have no direction. Someone can come in that's done it before and pulled up. And that's what happened with Candy when we first started deconstructing. She was doing research and finding people, and found a group that was kind of discussing different ideas of, this is a different aspect of how the Bible can be read and translated. And it just sunk in, and it helped guide us out of the darkness.
Yeah, you need other people to come alongside you, especially when you're suffering. And then as you come out, there might be shame involved, because you voted a certain way, or, and you feel like and then you have some people that will be like, it's your fault that we got here. It's, you need to really feel that shame. And no, you don't. It's a natural
You're no better
byproduct
than Christian
when you come
nationalists that are holding you in church and pushing shame on you to keep you in the faith and to keep you on the straight and narrow to stay within the religious realm. How's that any different than someone on the outside shaming you for how you were beforehand too? It's not.
Yeah. That's not going to solve anything.
Yeah.
I think we focus more on the state of shame than we do putting ourselves in the position of the people we've harmed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if we because even though that perception will always be skewed because we won't know what it's like to be them because we are not them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if we stop to think like, how could this have harmed me if I was this other person? I do think there are times when guilt and shame need to be sat in for a moment. To
That's true.
Why am I feeling this way? Right.
Yeah.
But I think to what your point was, see, this is why I'm not in for punitive justice. When is it enough?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There is.
When is it enough?
Exactly. Yeah.
When have you filled the cup enough? When have you felt shame enough, like to rebound? That's why you have to be open to criticism and be open to, and that's so hard when you leave a controlled religion like that, because being able to take that criticism, at least for me, was one of the hardest parts of my deconstruction, because I was already so beaten down.
Yeah.
I didn't have an ego. I didn't have a sense of self to grasp onto. I never believed I was a good person. They told me I was a terrible person all the time. And it wasn't because I wasn't a good person.
Yeah.
It was because it was never enough.
Yes.
Exactly. And so you have to then be open to be like, I was wrong. And then I've participated in a system that has harmed other people.
Yeah.
And that
you kind of have to be like, it's not my fault that I was programmed this way, but it's my responsibility to stop. And to not perpetuate it.
Not fix
yeah,
right
exactly.
Now.
Now that you're aware, once you become aware of it, it is your fault.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's where guilt can help you go, oh, like if you find yourself tripped up in again, like, oh, okay, like now I've got to
rehearsing this thing. If I want accountability from other people, then I have to be accountable.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Which in the church is everyone else is going to hold you accountable. You know, I remember being in men's groups in church, and it was, you go to an accountability group. And at the end of each time, we had a little sheet we would read. And did you do this week? Did you do this week? Did you do this? And it was going through a list of accountable things. And at the very end was, did you lie at any time while reading off this list? This is our accountability to each other. And we're going to hold each other tight to the scripture and be good Christ-like people. But it was on other people to help you hold you, because it was taking the responsibility off the individual to actually, and I think that's one of the biggest problems in the church that has to be worked out outside the church is there's no self-recognition, because you don't have to do the work yourself. You're just getting fed all the bullshit.
It's either Satan tempted you or God. Like, you don't get to take credit for the good stuff you do either. You know, it's like, that's God. And if you do something bad, it's your sin nature, which is corrupt, or the devil deceived you, you know, and it's just like, instead of like
God's testing you and testing your faith.
Testing you. Yeah. I mean, there's never like, okay, just sitting in it. Why am I doing this? Why, you know, that you avoid that. You already have, why. Well, God, Jesus,
that's
Satan.
That's why our president's a good person, because he's sitting in it all the time.
Wow.
It depends if you get that joke or not. So,
oh my God,
there's a bit of a delay, but I got it.
Like
I'm sorry, I took us off the track.
I was this close to saying a joke, and I'm like, oh man, do I want to put that on the internet? I don't know yet. Hold on. I'm like, see, this is where I'm saying, like, I feel Christianity deactivates your intuition.
Yeah.
Because for you to be accountable means other people can hold you accountable, but that means that your accountability is based on what they think you did wrong, instead of you admitting what you've done wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes the things they think you did wrong are not really wrong at all. They just have an opinion that it's wrong, you know? And you're like, no, I felt like it was the right move.
It's wrong for them.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Or they don't like the way that you did it because they are projecting on you. And if they were you, they think they would do it differently.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so like, it is hard to get this. And I know people who are probably deconstructing or working that way, this would be hard for them to hear, because I'm sure it's like, what do you mean? I feel guilty and I hold myself accountable. Mm-hmm. Your accountability is contingent on the acceptance of the people in your echo chamber.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is not an accountability where you are truly coming forward to say, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
That weighing of that conscience, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were always taught about our conscience, right? Mm-hmm. That knowing inside, that's why you get saved, or having that knowing. those people become your knowing, the theology,
exactly.
not what's in the Bible, not actual faith.
Mhm.
And this is where I believe that theology, Christianity in America right now is more theology than it is faith. And I did not realize
that's
that
true.
I deconstructed.
Yeah, that's true.
Because once I got out and didn't feel like I had anything to tether myself to because I didn't have a theology telling me how to believe, I had to refine my faith all over again because it wasn't faith, it was fear.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's why this authoritarianism is so functional, because it's that fear to control people that has been powerful. That's why colonization used it. It's why it is still being used.
It's effective. It's an effective tool.
It is effective. Yeah.
And it's effective because it harms, it's violence.
Well,
it's weaponized.
And Candy can probably speak to this a little more because she's a hypnotherapist and she's studied the mind and subconscious mind and the fear. Now, I'll set you up for this one. She's an old volleyball player. She'll love that. Here comes the spike. But the fear triggers the flight fight in you, which is a subconscious instinctual behavior. But that is not where you need to live. And you can expound on it better than I can.
You can't live there. If you live there, I mean, they get you there because then you're hypnotized and they can just be like, do this. And that's why whole masses of people they're just hypnotized. And I will have people, almost everybody that is coming out of religion or a really cult-like religion, not just, I don't know about Orthodox Christianity and stuff, but like evangelicals where I came from. And a lot of those clients that come to me are perpetually hypnotized. You almost have to teach them how to get in the present moment to actually be in that space because they are in fight flight constantly. So people can suggest things all the time.
Hold up. I've always been fascinated by like hypnotism. I mean, I watched Unsolved Mysteries as a kid. There was, hypnosis and then spontaneous combustion. I mean, there was like, but I don't know a whole lot about it. Yeah. So like I have been, I think I told you guys before we started that I had, been diagnosed with ADHD in 2020 and then autism in 2022. Getting my nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic, and to try to regulate my nervous system has been a fundamental part of all of this. Because I mean, I was wired up. There's a little clip I've got on TikTok right now that you can see what I looked like in 2020. What I look like now.
Oh yeah, we did see that.
And it was inflammation. I had Cushing syndrome.
Oh wow.
And so I say all that to say, like, are you telling me that like the nervous system is like I guess it kind of makes sense. Like a high control religion.
Oh yeah. Religion, they taught us in school. In school, they said the best people the military uses hypnosis, but religion is the top. They're very good at it. Very good at it.
Oh my God.
Think about, I've done posts on this before.
That's a whole other rabbit hole I have not even gotten to yet.
I've done posts on this. This might get you a little bit. The whole system of the church is set up for a trance. You walk into a room, think about how the church is built. It's usually vast ceilings, huge ceilings, a giant space that you feel small and insignificant in when you're in a group of people. So automatically they're playing off there's a power. You're walking into a room where there's power. You also come in expecting to receive. Now, I don't know if you've ever, since you don't know a whole lot about like hypnotherapy is kind of, we use hypnosis, but it's to get you to have control over your own mind again, because a lot of times you'll say to people, I'm a hypnotherapist. And they'll be like, that's mind control. And it's like, no, hypnotherapy is used for you to gain control over your mind because most likely everybody else has control of it. And you have no clue that the subconscious is just running in this trance all the time. And so you come into church with this expectancy. Well, when you come into a hypnosis session, you come expecting. We want you to come in a state of, I will allow myself to be hypnotized. Because if you come in and say, I'm not going to be hypnotized, your subconscious is just going to be like, nope,
It's not going to let you get into a trance. Same thing when you go into church. You have to be, they teach you to come in expecting to get from God, expecting to receive something, maybe an understanding, maybe a word or whatever. You come in expecting. The pastor is usually up on a pulpit or has a pulpit in front of him, but he's up on a stage of some sort. So there's a lifting up of that authority. So you will take in from him whatever he's saying. They'll use the music, playing the same songs. They pick the rhythms and stuff that will put you into trance. There's so many things going on that are set to put you into trance. Whether they do it on purpose or not, I don't know, but that is what they're using.
They do it on purpose.
I just never conceptualized it like that. I mean, because to me, there's no greater collective form of modern day witchcraft than in the American evangelical Christian church.
That's true.
Yeah. And
it's like what you just talked about too, like filling a space. Like that's with that whole energetic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And we didn't understand it either until Candy started studying this. And then she's telling me about it. I'm like, holy shit, hold on, wait, let's break this down. And you start thinking about how everything's set up and it's to make you feel small, insignificant,
and it's emotional manipulation.
Oh, yeah.
And then they put you in there and then the music kicks in, which is just a trance. Because you remember the music, all of a sudden you're singing holy, 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 holy. And you just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it until they feel like they got you.
They got to get you
in an emotional state. And then the pastor
state.
comes up and starts preaching because you're in that extreme receptive state.
You get in an emotional state, and that's in hypnosis. What we do is we get them like, okay, you come in feeling anxious, and I will ask you, what would you prefer to feel? Well, I want to feel calm and I want to feel relaxed. Okay, so in hypnosis, we will induce the feelings of calm and relaxed into the subconscious mind so it can feel it, experience it. And then we bring you into using your imagination into scenes where you would normally be anxious. And then your subconscious now has a program for being calm and relaxed in scenes that you typically go in where you would normally feel anxious. And it will remember. Now it's all of a sudden, instead of running on autopilot, it's got these two options. It's like, which program am I going to use? And then the more you reinforce it, it will eventually, that program will take over and you will naturally feel calm and relaxed in those situations. But they're doing that when they're using emotional, they have to get you into an emotional state. Notice the singing, at least where we went, it was always the singing was first. It like preps you to get you into a certain state. And the songs usually kind of play into what's going to be talked about. And then they just drop that in. Your subconscious is wide open. When you're in hypnosis, your subconscious is open to suggestions. They could dump anything in there and then you'll walk out. You will believe it unless you go in not wanting to receive, specifically saying, I'm not going to get anything out of this. You go in there doing that, you won't be open to it.
Yeah.
I just now thought too, like Dan, when you were talking about like even the structure of the sanctuary, right? And it just made me think like having a stage and then the pulpit and then like pews literally put you in a fawning position.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Everything up front's elevated, lifted up.
You to fawn while you are being emotionally manipulated and then rebuked, right? Because that's generally what is to come in the sermon.
If you start thinking about it, you'll just be like, oh, damn,
and think how much.
There's another. And,
yes. And as women, like that, it was during, while I was in hypnotherapy school, I was like, fawning, that is what as women, we were just trained to, that was considered good, and really you're in fight, flight.
Altar.
Yes.
Like going to the altar during altar call to fawn.
Man. Yep. Yeah. And it's praised. Like you're in fight, flight though. That's what you're in. And then it's like, yes, be in that. Yeah.
Just not from a hypnosis standpoint, because I've been looking at this from, a spirituality standpoint, like energetic exchange, things like that. Even just like,
that's what it should be.
Authoritarian, manipulative, that type of thing. But not looking at it even from a, psychological standpoint, but I've not studied in that. I've studied communication, that's my master's degree in communication studies. So I understand the interpersonal and that type of manipulation. And then studying education, I'm getting my PhD in education studies for higher education administration, and then seeing how through those studies, like organization culture, and then also like the manipulation of culture in groups, out groups, but then also how education is manipulated based on social structures for like what is held as like a collective truth and not. Of course, we even see that now with like them wanting to post the 10 Commandments in schools or like, start teaching Christianity as if they're doing something. You want somebody who doesn't believe like you to teach your religion?
Go ahead. It's not going to go well for your religion.
That's cute. Like I'll malicious compliance you all day. You want this to happen? Bet. It's going to happen. You want your kids to only read from the Bible? Great. Kids, open your books up to Psalm. We're going to talk about Bathsheba today.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? Like, but we're going to do it from a heroin standpoint. Like, I mean, this is not what. So I'm looking at things from that structure, but not from necessarily how psychologically that was a manipulation, because I was abused growing up. There was a lot of control from my father. He was an alcoholic, and a lot of what he did, although people in our church didn't know the abuse that was going on at home to the extent that it was going on, but they knew he was not a great person. He would, was still struggling with alcoholism. And I would ask him, like, how are you going on these mission trips regularly to, like, I think he was going to India. Like, oh, like, you don't need to go there at all. Like, they do not need
No,
you.
they do not.
At all. Like, quit.
They have like the oldest religion over there. It's like no.
Why don't you talk to some of them?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I need you to be open to receive. But he would be home and like be abusive. And then like, he would be gambling our money away. And then although I do not look at addiction at this point in my life as a moral affliction like I did then. But looking back, he would refuse to be accountable for the things that he did and the things that were contributing to his alcoholism. This is why he was an alcoholic in the first place. He was not a good person. And I would like ask him about this, and he's like, I'll just ask forgiveness about it. And it was this concept of like, if I'm a dude doing these things, I get a pass for all of the things I get to judge everybody else about. But we'll moralize it for anybody else. And I just remember like thinking like, because he did these things that he somehow contributed this false identity of who he was. But him going and doing those things also it gave him some sense of power. So like, I feel like this hypnosis thing was even in that, like in executing said actions, pulling that thought profile up in your head to like, enable you or motivate you to do things that are probably you deep down think are unethical. I just had not thought about it from a hypnosis standpoint. And it's just wild because of the emotional manipulation that I knew went on. And as a child, I was one of those kids, because probably of my neurodivergence, I'd get yelled at for crying all the time. Because I guess crying made my parents feel bad. Imagine like feeling bad.
I'm sorry that you feel bad. I'm crying, but I'm sorry.
I'll give you something to cry about. You already did.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need any more. I'm sorry my crying makes you feel bad. You could just, I don't know, be accountable. And now these people are in power. That's the age of truth that's I just like I remember getting to a point in my life thinking like, I wonder when I'll be okay, when I won't cry all the time. Because every emotion I had was filtered through crying.
Yes.
And that was somehow seen as disrespectful, or I wasn't doing something right. And then somehow that was against God's will. And then I'm like, so I couldn't stop. I couldn't understand how I could stop myself from crying. When am I going to be when am I going to be like all these other people who aren't so emotional? And then the same to grow up in the church, and they manipulate that, especially for neurodivergent people, that their emotions are what they are.
Yeah, you're not supposed to have the emotions. You're supposed to cover it up. You're not supposed
to be happy all the time. What are you talking about?
Yeah, you're not supposed to walk around with ash and sackcloth and all that. You have to have on that happy face and show the true love of Christ through you at all times. You can't let the emotions be
a human that has feelings that maybe you don't know. I mean, emotional regulation isn't taught either, because you're not supposed to have the emotions. You're supposed to have one. Be happy. And guys can be angry. That's okay. They can be angry sometimes, and they probably shouldn't be too happy, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's different, guys aren't taught to feel their emotions at all. And women are just told, you're just so emotional. They don't teach us anything about how to regulate them, to actually.
I think that's why men are trained to not be emotional. so that they do not have to recognize the emotions or the needs in the people around them.
That's probably true. Yeah.
And I think that's been like, you know, this whole political climate is like, people are like, oh, did I hurt your feelings? You're so emotional that these things are happening. These people like, I'm upset that, yes, complete strangers who I don't know, who are from another country, are going to be like
that's a human beings. Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry, but post-COVID, like we are in a post-COVID society. We all collectively experienced collective tragedy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At varying ways, in varying ways. I can't not look across the globe and see my own humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something that's also like, to me, the beautiful part of Christianity, because that's, I feel like what God whatever wanted.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
To see that, like, us have that, you know, commonality.
Yeah.
I just, how we got here, it is so far from anything I was taught that Jesus wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, of course, I'm like, and I was hypnotized about it the whole time. This episode of Unsolved Mysteries, that is just something that is like, you know, mind blowing. Because I can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like when I don't know anything about hypnosis, when you said that, I can like,
it resonates.
Because I know what it's like to feel settled now, because I don't cry on my emotions anymore.
Yeah.
I am happy. I'm actually the happiest I've ever been.
Exactly. Isn't that weird?
It's not so I can sin so much.
And it's real happiness. It's not, I'm not putting a smile on. When I'm happy, yes, it's actually all the things. One thing I've always said is like all the promises, like love, joy, peace, patience, you know, all the fruits of the spirits you're promised. When I was in the church, I was always wanting those, but it was like a striving. I had to like joy. It was like, of course I have joy, you know. But after like deconstructing, like I was like, I really have those things. I really feel at peace. I really feel joyful. I have self-control. All these things, which would be like the crying, because I used to have that too, like the tears. I was even told like they were manipulative. And I'm like, I cannot help not cry. I can't help it that's the emotion. If I'm angry, tears are welling up. I mean, it was just the only emotion that would come up. And I didn't know how to stop it. And learned how to, partly stop being afraid of my emotions and actually ask myself, what am I feeling and why am I feeling this? You know, not stop running from it and being afraid to feel, because you need to feel those emotions so they can move through the body. Otherwise, they do get stuck, and that causes other issues.
I'm going to drop a grenade in here and just let you two react to this, because, and I don't think you mentioned it yet, we may get to your spiritual background eventually. But let me put this out there. We'll get it on the next time you're on, so that's fine. But here comes the grenade. Okay. You mentioned earlier before the episode started that your father was a narcissist, and dealing with that. Think about this, and I just want to drop this and see what your response is. But for a narcissist, your emotions are uncomfortable for them, and you're fucking up their world. So stop doing it, because you're messing up my reality. And a narcissist has their own completely separate reality from the real world. And your emotional and your crying and everything else doesn't fit into that.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you guys talk about that for a little bit?
I think that's upheld by the church.
I was thinking the same thing.
Because again, that if they acknowledge it, then they would have to be accountable. Accountable for harms, accountable for ways they've supported things that hurt other people, accountable for ways that they did not. I've said for a long time, if your faith were anything worth having, it should stand up to scrutiny.
Exactly. Yep.
And so I lived in a world that was very much, that's, I feel like, why my nervous system was so messed up, because what my father was telling me was reality. Because that's what the reality he was willing to acknowledge was in contradiction to what my body was feeling. So when you said that you were told you were crying because you were being manipulative, no, as a narcissist, they felt manipulated by your tears because they had to then acknowledge, if they didn't think you were being manipulative, they would have to acknowledge that maybe something that I did had this effect on this person, and that is the emotional response.
Yeah.
And so like the church to me, so like even going back to the sanctuary, pews, stage, pastor is up above. That's not a shepherd.
No.
Shepherd has a staff that like, you know, that's all. They're on the same level with the sheep.
They are. That's true. Yeah.
And so to have an environment to be conducive to like support that, you would need to be like in a circle so that everybody could see everybody. And then that person, various people could go to the middle, like things like that. Because even those physical representations, like even small, uphold this system, this idea that the person that we see as the leader is supreme. And I think that goes back to all these narcissistic tendencies. And then I also think too, like, looking back on my experience with my father, and I didn't grow up knowing he was a narcissist. I had no idea. And then, I mean, I thank goodness that's not, because I know that there is a diagnosable, but then there's also like ways of being, or I guess how I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or anything, but I would say enabling narcissistic tendencies, you know, as a survival when you're in that environment. But I remember knowing once I was at a certain age, knowing I can get up every day and choose not to be an asshole. And I knew at the minimum that my father had that option or opportunity available to him, and he chose differently every single day. And it was because of what was good for him. And he lacked that narcissistic approach to life, which is that toxic individualism as well. Puts a barrier up between you and the people around you to say, I am more important. And that mirror, while self-hating, but refusing to see your humanity in the people around you, so that you do not have to be accountable for any way that you've hurt them, all while pointing the finger at them for your folly, so to speak, not knowing you're standing in front of a mirror that entire time. That's what that is to me.
And it's all because they have never learned how to handle uncomfortable emotions. Like they just can't sit with it because it means they are bad. When instead of like, maybe I'm doing something that is harmful. Doesn't mean I am bad. It means I'm doing something. And if I'm doing something, I can do something else. But they don't understand that. And it does come from, you know, his father probably was a narcissist, or his mother or something, you know, and it is just running down, and somebody has to break the cycle somewhere. And that's you know, like, no, that's not going to go down into my children. I'm not doing that, because it creates, and these pastors kind of tend to have these narcissistic tendencies. And then the congregants tend to be codependents. They can't think for themselves. You got to tell me, how should I feel about this? You know, who should I vote for? And it creates that. I'm sure it helps perpetuate that disorder in some sort of way.
I mean, but I think that there's an attraction to American Christianity where mediocre men can
get power,
roll in there, and then it's like, well, the Bible says.
That's true.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But like, okay, and then you know, there's that. But then there's like, you know, so I've been in the church my whole life. From infancy, and we were always Baptist, and it was, you know, this evangelical or fundamentalist type of like, you know, I couldn't wear anything above my knee. I couldn't show my collarbones or wear tank tops because, you know, it was our fault. That
your body is shameful and you better cover it up.
Men's brains function differently. They have no self-control, you know.
Even though the Bible actually says different. It says young men have self-control. Like, you got it, use it. And it says you got your eyes out. Don't tell her to cover up.
And so like, but there was this continuous like, but that's just, you know, men are just different. I mean, they could be, but it's also like maybe you're socializing them to be different.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, you know, that's how I was raised. But I remember being 5 years old. So lived in it had mice and snakes in it.
wow.
I'll never forget. My mom dyed her hair and went to grab a towel out of the bathroom, and a big, huge black snake was coiled up underneath of it, like that kind of
Wow.
cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were building. My father was building our house. We were living in the basement. We lived in the basement more years than we lived upstairs. Unfinished basement, concrete floors, kerosene heaters to heat the place. My brother and I lived in a room that had no door and was just like plywood in the middle of this basement. And I remember being in the room with my mom and sitting there, and we're like talking. And I asked her, because I had heard while we were like visiting the southern part of the state, because this is while we lived up in the Eastern Panhandle. And I remember asking her, is it true that you marry somebody like your dad? And she said, that's what they say. And I said, do you think Papa, like her dad, is like Dad? And she said, yeah, I think they're alike in a lot of ways, because I respected her dad a lot. And she said, I think they're alike in a lot of ways. I think that's why they don't get along. And at 5 years old, in my mind, I still remember this. I'll be 40 in April. 5 years old, I remember like telling myself, I'm never going to marry a man like that.
Wow. And you made it come true.
My father hated my husband. That's how I knew he was the one. And he was a good person. Like he was a good person. But that was like the whole concept. And like I told you guys earlier, like when I was younger growing up, like I thought feminism was this whole like bad, or any concept of like equity, in regards to, that's what I was taught. But actually in practice, I didn't even believe that. But I would have never considered myself a feminist. But I remember growing up and seeing that my father, though my mom worked like just as much as he did, it was her that she was expected to clean the entire house and to do all the laundry and come home after working all day and cook for everyone. And my father, I'd ask him like, well, what do you do? And he's like, well, I do work outside. We are in West Virginia. We have all the seasons. Like you mow grass from like maybe May or maybe September. Okay. And then and when he talked about doing work outside and working on our property and things like that, like my mom would have to be out there doing that too. And then it wasn't too long. Like I was like 9 years old when they trained me to be like the housekeeper.
Yeah.
After I came home from school, and then I realized my brother wasn't getting those cleaning. Yeah. And then it became my responsibility. And then if he came home and the house was not to his specification, that was a justification for him to completely ransack the place or throw a fit. And I just remember these were the small, because I know people want to, what was that moment that forced your deconstruction? I don't know, a lifetime of witnessing and it wasn't a judgment perspective. It was hearing people say that Christianity and what God wanted were these things, but in their real life. And it wasn't just people being human. It was really for control. And from such a young age, I could see I didn't want to marry a man like that because I was already miserable.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know how he was going to be when he got home.
Yeah. Unpredictable.
Yes. And then he was different. I loved going to church as a child because it was an escape.
Yep.
I knew I'd be safe there. Yeah. And I knew he wasn't going to act a fool.
I feel like
in front
I'm
of
talking
those
to Candy
folk.
right now.
Yeah. I can relate so much to what you're saying.
I knew he wasn't going to be a dick at our church potluck.
Yep.
He might have gotten overstimulated and then at home went off on us, but I knew I was safe as long as we were there.
Yeah.
And so I buried myself in church and church activities and, did as much of the things as possible. And then it was never enough.
No.
And it wasn't you were probably just not fit. I was there every time the doors were open. I was always at church. I was, a Bible thumper. I pray around the flagpole, going to colonization trips, doing all of these, these lists, the checklist, right? Of do all these things to be a good Christian. And it was in those moments I would realize it's never going to be enough. No. I'm not enough of a Christian cool kid. And it was because I would be hearing the things that they were saying about Christ, about how he befriended the people who were outcast, about how he wanted to understand them and relate to them and share goodness. But if I accepted the LGBTQIA plus community, then I was woke or I was anti-God because, that's a sin. But then it was always from a place of judgment.
Yeah.
But if we behaved Christ-like, that's where we got the most judgment.
Yeah.
And then it'd be turned around like, well, that's not what he meant. Like, well, how do you know?
Yeah.
And it's because it serves these individuals and that toxic approach to life. They think it serves them better by behaving that way. And it's only because I think that they want to remain in power.
Yes, 100%.
Or what they think is in power.
Yeah.
But looking back, like, I have wonderful childhood memories of church in the sense that it was a place of refuge for me. There are people that are from the church I went to as a child who I'm still in contact with that if I needed something today would not hesitate. But when we moved down to the southern part of the state, right before I went to high school and started attending a church, that emotional manipulation and those things were so prevalent.
Yeah.
And then it was like this whole, eventually my dad couldn't hide it anymore. So like the alcohol stuff, and the gambling, and they swept it under the rug. They did not address his issues, even though he was actively harming other people in the church. That pastor, even when my parents were divorcing, counseled my mom and was basically like, he's never going to change. You need to told her to get a divorce.
Oh, wow.
And then 6 weeks after they got their divorce, the day that he got his divorce from my mom, he proposes to his second wife, who he got an annulment from. And she went and talked to the same pastor, and he told her to marry my father.
Did she?
Yes. And had an annulment 6 weeks after they got married because he locked her out of their cruise room. And she was a single mother with 3 kids who had somewhat of a savings, and he completely drained the savings when they got back from the cruise. And so she annulled the marriage. And then he had a third wife before he died. And every woman he was with, he manipulated. He started dating he was older than my mother and started dating her while she was still in high school. They got married before she graduated high school. They were engaged within 6 weeks.
Wow.
She was groomed.
Yeah, she was.
And so he did all of these things, drove the church bus. He went on these trips and he did all these things because he was putting up that facade so that he could continue to behave badly until it was so comfortable for him to be able to behave like that in public.
Yeah.
And eventually he was kind of pushed and shunned out of the situation. And of course they started attending another church that was close to where I live now. But I know they didn't know specifically how I was being abused, but if they were at all worried or concerned, looking outside of themselves instead of how is this person making me look, they should have been able to intervene in regards to my family. There was multiple instances where CPS should have been called in. I should have been removed from my home. And the church was my refuge, but then it became a prison because if I did not behave or act in a certain way, then they would rebuke me knowing good and well what he was also participating in. And so I don't have one deconstruction hyper moment, really. The whole thing unraveled when Trump started running for president, and I was completely sickened at the idea that my faith of following Christ was supporting this man who was so terrible of a person. Who wants to use it as this, I'm like, how can I see that he's using you all as pawns? He's not a Christian. He doesn't believe in any of this.
No, that's what I told my parents last weekend. I was like, guys, he's pretending to be a Christian. It just goes over their heads. They cannot grasp it. Yeah.
He hijacked our faith so that he could use these people and their support to get him in power. But they understand that because they know what it's like to sit in the pew and let the person stand up top of the podium and tell them how they're supposed to feel about stuff because they don't know how they truly feel because apparently they've been hypnotized.
Yeah, 100%.
It's
the same thing. They use the same playbook to manipulate politics and religion. And it's gets people to go against their own best interest. Like we were talking earlier, when these farmers out in the western part of our state vote for Trump and don't realize that how many immigrants are working for him, how many subsidies are being funded by the federal government that are now, gone.
Well, they know that they have those things, but they're thinking and doing this that the people that we're told are the problem are going to get it, but not me. Does Francesca say on TikTok, like, leopards aren't going to eat my face? Not knowing that, like, no, that when you're voting, it's like people will willingly give up their rights just as long as the people they're told to hate are going to get punished. And it's like they'll willingly give that up, not realizing, like, wait a second, that includes me. It always did. But you're right. Like, they will vote actively thinking it's because they're desperate to get ahead. They want to be the millionaire. They want to be
that
the millionaire.
is it. They just
want
think
to see
they have
themselves.
It's the American dream that they're chasing still, this illusion that will never happen.
Is it? You know, like, I sit here and think, like, it is a hamster wheel. Because if we have the capability and the capacity as a society to make sure everyone has food, shelter, all of the basic necessities.
We do.
Survive.
For free.
For
really.
free. Or even to, like, just make community.
Very little. Yes.
Yes. And, but because there are individuals who exist who want to consume, then they want to prop it up as the American dream is scaling ahead of other people so that you can look back. And instead of acknowledging where you're coming from, you can just point and say, well, at least I'm not that guy. And the problem is that at any point, you're not that guy because you had an opportunity that guy didn't have. They teach you that, no, the problem is, like, things like DEI. Because they want to limit the availability of resources, because I've said this for years living in West Virginia, they steal or restrict our necessities, convince us that they are, like, privileges. So that they can fight for the privileged things while we fight each other for bare necessities.
That's true.
And blame each other for why we don't have them because we're engaged in that argument instead of pointing at them and saying, why are you doing that?
Look at the eggs right now. Okay. Why are egg prices so high? It's because the corporations that raise the chickens to produce the eggs breed the environment to have flu outbreaks to wipe out whole flocks and farms. Because we can't have free range chickens running around. We have to have one chicken per square foot in 1,000
because we have to make more and more and more money and more money and more money.
Like, this is what, it's like the profits. Profits. For who, though? Like, we don't, and you're right, with all of these. And then, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but growing up in the church, like, I was taught that, like, caring about the environment was dumb. Like, because Jesus was going to come back, so we could just, like, shit all over this rock and be out, get Trump done all over the place, and then just be out of here. But, like, if you really cared about God or the things that he created and you were supposed to value those things and not destroy them, then why do we do that to the earth? Like, shouldn't those chickens not die just because, like, we really shouldn't want, like, anything to suffer? I understand if they're going to be consumed at some point, but like what? Like, even like that, which this is where things get contradictory to me, because, like, they want to be anti-trans because they say, like, you should like the way that God created you and you should accept that, but then, like, will destroy their environment, not honoring that God made it the way he made it.
That's true. That's a good point.
Like, we've reassigned the earth multiple times, on purpose, like, in able to, like, harm it and manipulate it. I'm not trying to relate that, like, to minimize anything in regards to trans issues or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that's how, like, they continuously, like, feel like twist in on themselves to, like, justify certain behaviors that are in direct
conflict.
What we were taught, like. And shouldn't we care about these farmers? Like, they feed us.
It's you should. It's another example that's prevalent today is I can't think of her name, the press secretary. She was up whining that people weren't calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And it struck me that she and Trump want to fight for the pronoun name of this body of water down here.
And we've reassigned the ocean.
We can't except
Yeah.
someone else saying, I'm she.
I would
her,
like to use
or
the pronouns of
them.
she. What? No, we absolutely can't. You know,
You know,
Last time I checked, I don't think any of the angels had any like genders,
No.
and neither did
no.
But-
There's
like that is how over sexualized we are. Like,
Yeah.
why are you worried about what people do with their genitals?
exactly.
That's disgusting.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I understand she, she may have had to pay her dues to get in that
Oh,
position.
I'm sure
I
she did,
realize
probably.
paying her dues would mean it would cost her her upper lip.
Yeah.
But I don't take any advice from someone like that. No, like I can't like that. The ridiculous spewing of that.
No.
Yeah.
Like I can't like. And what do you mean? Like it's a fact that that's what it's named. To who?
To
him?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's
I'm
just
not holding up his reality for him anymore.
Yeah.
We're not holding up his
No.
reality.
And
No.
there's another one that Fort Bragg was Fort Liberty
Oh,
for
my
a while
God.
here. Did you hear about that one? And
Yeah.
they renamed it Fort Bragg again. But the reason it changed originally to Fort Liberty was because it was named after General Bragg.
You can't name it after.
So you can't name it after a Confederate general. So they named it after some other dude, that just random army guy that happened to have the last name Bragg, is what it's renamed after now.
just so they can
it's
have
like-
the same name, but it's really a
To say
different
that-
person.
We're going back to the way things
Yeah.
were. Why?
Yeah.
Like, what? But like, why? Like, and make America great for who?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Who is it great for?
Yeah.
Because like,
When
I
is
don't
it
think
ever? I was even telling
Me.
my mom.
It was great for me.
Well, yeah, exactly.
It's a ban.
But not even you. It's really the wealthy that
Yeah.
it has been good for.
Yeah.
Because even just your basic white guy, a lot of them are just struggling to get by. It's the wealthy that are the
Yes.
problem. That is where the divide is you've got these people that are uber, and I'm not talking about someone who's actually taken themselves from poverty to wealth. That's completely different. They know what it feels like
How many
to be
people
here.
is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
true.
it's not many.
But I'm talking about somebody like Trump who has never known what it's like to go grocery shopping, really. He's never had to sit and write a grocery list ever. He's never washed his own clothes. He's never made his own bed. He's never done basic things that we all have to do.
Yeah.
He's probably never made his own cup of coffee. He probably doesn't even know how to use a coffee
He's
machine.
never got to the,
Does he even dress
January
himself? I don't know.
28th and thought, I hope them checks don't
I know he
clear.
doesn't change himself.
That's true.
Sorry. Dan.
It's all good. It's all good. Maybe that's why he's going.
Oh, I
It's
can't conceptualize that this is this was God's choice.
Well, I'll
Oh.
tell you what my dad said last weekend, because he voted for Trump. And my mom voted too, but she's kind of like, I think he might be the Antichrist. And I don't really like. Okay, just
Your eyes.
I said, okay, he
Well,
might
acceptance
be.
is the first step.
But they still will twist it, because I said, okay, I would say he is an Antichrist, because he's definitely opposed to Christ, Jesus of Nazareth. He's definitely opposed to, because he would call that guy woke, right? And my dad goes, well, I guess I voted for the Antichrist. But then just a few sentences later, he said, but you know what? God's using him. So it's okay that I voted for him, because God is using him and he's going to bring about the end.
You can pick your jaw off the floor any second now.
So that he's just twisted it. So it's okay. It's okay. No accountability, no looking inward as to why I did this. Why did I vote for this guy?
Were you all brought up in a church that felt revelation was the end?
Yes.
I was brought
He
up
wasn't. He
Catholic.
was brought up Catholic, which is
So we
different.
just-
yeah.
we just
But I
drank
was
beer
born
and-
and raised in it. Yeah.
You
It
know,
is-
hope for the best, and you'd be in purgatory.
Which at least
Oh,
is more. At least that's more merciful.
We're
At
there.
least.
We
I
might
hate
be
to
in
tell
hell.
you Right. Well, actually, I'm like, I mean, what am I supposed to be scared of?
I know, really.
And in a
This is
few
it.
years, we all will be burning because
Yeah.
of the climate
Yeah,
change.
really.
So, what am I scared of again? That has been one of the fascinating. I used to look on other faiths. It's like those things internally that like are probably rising to the surface, trying to like make you aware, like, hey, bitch, this is you, right?
Yeah.
I was fascinated with Scientology.
Mhm.
point finger,
Yeah.
They don't even Google. They don't even look their stuff up.
Yeah.
And then years later, I'm like, oh my God, King James is gay.
Yeah.
Yes. Bye.
Oh my God, Revelation wasn't thought to be a thing, from even Jesus's disciples until I don't know, however many,
about 18. Yeah.
Like what? Like that was some bro made that up.
Yeah.
It was based off
Revelation.
some young girl's dream.
Yeah. It was based off a little girl's dream.
Charles Darby.
Yeah. It's crazy. But now, if you push back against that, you're the heretic. But
because
that's a recent belief. Yeah. Because they don't
I
use
was
Google.
pointing to Scientologists to be like, I can't believe you guys thought that there's this, random, because some dude wrote a science fiction novel and locked it up in a box and told you that was a religion.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, we put ours in a binding.
Yeah.
We took a bunch of letters and bound them together.
Yeah, we were like, look at these letters. And then, stuff from the Dead Sea. Oh, but not that stuff. Because there's women.
Yeah. Oh, there's women that wrote, that can't be in
so I'd be like, and I was raised with this idea that the Bible was written as to sit down and recount
like the Holy Spirit is writing through the pen. Yeah.
Yeah. And not that and then, I follow Dan McClellan on TikTok.
Oh yeah. I love him.
Faves, right.
Yeah.
And for him to be like, the word of God never says it's the word of God, and I'm like, right. So then me saying these things to people, but I will, when they hold true, because they're like, King James version is the only version that I'll read. Cool. That guy translated that because he didn't like what the other church said. So he retranslated to focus on men because he liked men and actually kissed them in public.
And they're like,
and then they're like, they look at me,
it's that blank stare. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's they go offline.
I had somebody say to me the other day, oh my God, so King James is the only version I read. And I was like, oh my God, you support LGBTQ plus people too?
Oh, that's a good answer.
No, what are you talking about? King James is gay, man.
Yeah.
And they're just like, because I was in a high control religion. That was what that was. And now it makes so much sense. And I think this is why I've been terrified of him and his administration, terrified of the impact. Am I terrified of him? No, I think they're all idiots. Yeah. They are dumb. This is one of the things that's gotten so frustrating for me too, because I am somebody who will have undying hope. And it's just because there is inherent goodness in all people. Yeah. And it does not matter how terrible someone is. Truthfully, even in, maybe that is the biggest thing I've gained from my faith, they will always see their fall. Yeah. I have never had a situation in my life where I have seen this perspective of the person who did terrible harm to get completely away with it in some way, because they participate too much in that in their life to not have some type of fallout. Yeah. And what I've been most frustrated though with his administration is how incompetent they are. So people want to relate this to Germany, right? Germany emulated the Reconstruction era and enslavement in the United States to have their movement. So we need to bring this back home and realize it was always our problem.
Yeah, it has been always our problem.
Germans actually studied fascism here.
Yeah, that's what she's saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning.
But not from in the 1920s.
Yeah.
Fascism was rampant here. Yeah. And they were studying here and looked at Henry Ford and every one of them guys.
That's the Reconstruction era for the United States.
Yeah.
And so that's what that's they're looking at us of how terrible we don't acknowledge that in our history.
No. Oh no.
But we didn't think we were terrible back then.
No. We gave them the groundwork for it.
Correct. And so I'm saying, bring that back home, but his administration frustrates me because they are the chaos that Hitler enabled in 50 days was coordinated, and it was like V for Vendetta chaos, where it was like, we're going to plant this here, we're going to do this here. And it was intentional to cause this response. Yeah. Their incompetence is what's causing chaos. So there's where I have hope. But then also I see this too much in the goodness of people, even if however they voted. Yeah. Because person to person and in a community, when you have to look someone in the eye, you can't make that decision and you won't.
No.
And it's because out on this big public stage, they make us fawn in fear. Yeah. But I'm there are people that have so much goodness, and interpersonally, but then also we are so much smarter and so much more resourceful.
Yes.
Especially like the people I jokingly call myself the trash queen. I will remake anything. I will turn it into whatever I want. Because we've been chronically under resourced. And so if I have to go out into like a trash bin and find, I will, thrift stores are my friend. Actually, I'm sitting in a room that's like my changing like air, like dressing room. This is all like, antique reed purpose.
Yeah.
Like that
looks good.
That killer mirror, $5.99 from Goodwill, right? Like
nice.
This is like, but we have so much ingenuity that it's kept separated because we are taught to hate each other.
Yeah.
If I know though that we are so much smarter and so much more sustainable if these people weren't around.
Yeah.
We have to value each other though. This is like you talked about pro-life stuff earlier. They want to say they're pro-life. I would love to see someone who claims to be pro-life actually give a good goddamn
about
their fellow man in action.
Yeah.
Don't go to church and say you care about somebody.
Yeah.
I want to see you at a food bank. I want to see you serving the homeless. I want to see you out in your community paying for someone's bill randomly because they look like they're having a rough time.
Yeah.
That's what I want to don't tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
But I want to see that in action. And to like, we are taught to hate each other because that is what makes money.
Yeah.
But if we were to really actually love each other like we were taught we were supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, we'd be unstoppable if we could come, like imagine the good we could do on this planet if we could come together. We've
actually lived that because in the church, we always had that feeling LGBTQ, they're going to hell. They're going to act on it. It's purely sexualized. Their whole community is just about sex. There's no relationship there. It's just about going around to
that's how they
bathhouses and all this and hooking up. Until our niece went to college and most of her friends were LGBTQ and they started coming over to our house. And we had a gentleman that worked in the grocery store we both worked at the time that was gay. And me and him got along great. And all of a sudden we personified this. Yeah,
then you have to you have real people in front of you and it's like.
This is a decent guy that I enjoy being around and I can't damn him to hell. And all these other kids that are coming over to our house, these are good kids. They care about my niece and their other friends. They really look out for each other. They're decent human beings. How can I rationalize this idea of persecuting these people and telling them they're going to hell, telling them they're going to burn? They didn't come over to our house and turn it into a brothel and just start having their way at anything. So all the things I was being told was false, and that you start seeing them false and the cards start falling off this house of cards that are built up about, and then like anything else you were told and you start humanizing all this. It strips away all this fear and this ignorance to what's going on.
But you have to get around. Well, I mean, and for us, that was because our daughter came out to us in 2018, I think.
Yeah.
But we had been around, all of our mindset had changed because of being up close. And I was talking to my dad about this not too long ago because he's like in denial that she's gay or he just won't talk about it. Right. And I bring it up on purpose to just make him face it, And he said, okay, so I said, there's no way in hell that I would choose a God that would torture my child. I will choose my child. I'll go with my child to that space if I have to. And he's like, well, what if you're wrong? And I was like, I will stand toe to toe with that God and say, why did I love my child more than you loved her? And he just had nothing to say there. He was like, okay, like
I think that's when I knew the God that I had been presented wasn't real.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Because I realized that as wretched of a person as I was told that I was, I could not condemn even my enemy to hell.
No.
Even with all the abuse I sustained for my father, I could not say I would want him in an eternal torment because that does nothing to repay any of the debt.
No.
To repay any of the things that happened.
It makes you suffer more too to watch that and see it. I mean, how is that beneficial?
It's not. And if we're taught that God is this heavenly Father, then you're telling me that I have more compassion than this God that you want me to worship, that you tell me loves me unconditionally, but would be willing to see me tormented for eternity because the people that are here spewing his message use it to violently harm people and then gaslight the shit out of them to tell them, but daddy hits me because he loves me.
Yeah, exactly.
And my husband has a friend of his who's a minister, and he is in a different denomination than we are. And years ago, when my husband and I were first married, I looked up to this man a lot. And I remember being shocked to learn how leftist he was. But I always, even from a young age as a kid, remember believing inherently that the individuals who seemed to be more progressive in politics seemed to exhibit their Christianity in a much more authentic way than the people who were like, I don't want kids to have free lunch.
Yeah.
Because the ones who seemed to be more liberal and accepting seemed to be the ones willing to do more of what Christ had commanded of us. And I remember looking at things in that way, but then also thinking, if God were to love me in this way that they're telling me that he loves me, then they're just expecting me to accept this and then not have any type of recourse and any exchange whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to, Dan, what you asked earlier about that narcissistic example, because then it's a one-sided relationship where you end up having to just do all of these things, checklist again, to be Christian enough. But then also thinking the Christians who didn't want people to have, they'd be the most vocal about things while physically doing the least out in the community.
Yeah.
And then sitting on this high horse about it. And I'm thinking why do I care more for my kids than God does?
Yeah.
How am I? But anyway, my husband's friend looked at me one day, and I just remember, he's liberal, he's a minister, and he said he didn't believe in a hell. And he'd gone to seminary, and I was shocked. What do you mean? And then later, reading and realizing the conversations about hell were not really existent in the Bible.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, but honestly believing that it was more radical of a way to live as a Christian to not believe in hell than it was to believe that there was. It was more faith to not believe in a hell, because then you believed in the inherent and fundamental goodness, meaning you would never give up on people ever, because you wouldn't have to.
Yeah.
I mean,
because
wow.
They're not determined. They're not sent somewhere permanently. And then instead of and you talked about you having these exposure to other types of people. We were taught Jesus hung out with all kinds of people, but then we're told, oh, well, you can't be unequally yoked even in your friendships, right?
Yeah. Oh,
why? Because if we spent time with these people, it would be much harder to condemn them.
Yeah. That's really why.
Yes.
But they tell you they're going to pull you down. That's what they tell you. They're going to drag you down with them.
Yes. They're going to pull you down.
And that's true, but it's not down. They pull you up into humanity. They're going to pull you out of the faith because you're starting to humanize all the demonic behavior that's happening out and realize this isn't bad. This is just humanity. It really affects my life none. If Adam and Steve are living next door to me, what they do in the bedroom doesn't pour out into
and it's weird if it does bother you so much.
Why should I care about what's going on in there?
Yeah.
Because they think that someone existing that is in contradiction of their reality
shouldn't be allowed to exist.
Is the harm.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking that what they're wanting would actually harm someone.
Yeah.
They think that, because I've even heard people say, I'm like, what does it matter to you if people who are gay can get married?
Yeah.
Even if you were to think it's wrong, then don't have a gay marriage.
Just don't do it. Yeah.
Right. You don't believe in drinking.
So don't drink.
You let it sit on the shelf in the store and you don't argue about that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And then they were like, well, if that's the case, then we should just, legalize murder. Murder harms other people.
Yes. Oh, that's
But you're talking about things that are supposed to be self-harm, that is a sin that you want to intervene on because you don't want people to exist, to be able to exist differently than you are restricting yourself from existing, which tells me how little faith you have.
Yeah.
You are not a strong Christian.
Yeah. Your faith can't handle anything pushing back against it.
When we deconstructed and started telling, because Candy's family's evangelical, and that's who we went to. And we started telling them that, and we got in debates with them. And one of the retorts we always got was, so you want to murder people?
Or you love babies being murdered.
You love babies being murdered. And then,
you love Christians being, because I think they were being beheaded in a different country East at the time. And they were like, you like Christians being beheaded. And I was just like,
which religion do you think has the biggest body count?
Exactly.
That could go many ways here with the sexual abuse in the church too.
Same. That too.
Yeah, so.
I mean, I'm just saying.
That's true.
Either
they
side.
win both of them. Yeah.
I don't know about your vein of Christianity, but like divorce is not even an issue anymore. Like we're just rolling through.
Yeah.
So body count that way, we're that way. Like I'm just saying, like, what's you're worried about these individuals, like, and is that sort? There was so much propaganda growing up. Like, is that even true?
I don't know. Yeah. That's exactly. It's just like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all these people 100%. Are being persecuted. Was it us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing the persecution, probably.
This concept of the Christian faith is always, you're inherently evil, so you're going to naturally go to the awful and the sinful behavior. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're trying to reconcile here when we say we don't believe in this, that we don't believe in the sin nature anymore. We believe everyone's inherently good, and we just have to find that within ourselves and develop that within ourselves, and then realize when I do something, did that harm anyone else? And if it did, how can I make recompense with that and deal with that, and also not do it in the future, or whatever. But for the most part, my internal being does not want to harm other individuals. So when you say no, so now you think murder's all right. No, that's causing harm on anything else. But if I have a beer at night and I'm sitting in my house and it's just does nothing, just I enjoyed having that beer tonight and didn't affect my relationship with Candy, with my relationship with my kids, anything. What is the harm in that? There's no sin in that behavior. But if I went out and had a 12-pack and then started kicking the dog and yelling at Candy and the kids, okay, I got to deal with that. But it's this whole idea of this concept of they need these set of rules to hold them in check and hold them in line. That scares me more than someone that says there's no sin in the world. Because what happens when that God's gone, or you reconfigure that God's rules to now attack LGBTQ+, to go after women as being lesser than, go after people of different skin colors as being lesser than, because that's what our God tells us now. And we're going to start enslaving these peoples again because it's in the Bible. That scares me more than having no set moral code by a religious faith, because we have moral codes inside of us already.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, that's another conversation that I have with my dad is he's like, well, then how do you know what's right or wrong if you don't think the Bible is the inerrant word of God? I was like, okay, the Bible has been twisted and you lose something every time you translate. It has
to renegotiate itself.
Yes.
It contradicts itself.
Yes.
Like even in the creation story is contradicted. The beginning and in chapter 2, it is not the same.
No, it's not. And then, and I said, because I said, you use the verse like the Bible is, or, the scriptures are useful for teaching or reproof and all that. That's in the New Testament. I go, the New Testament didn't even exist when that was written. It was written in one letter, and it's referring to the old writings. So you can go back to the Old Testament, which you don't want to live by because there's a lot of rules in there that you don't follow, and he's like, okay, but then how do you know I go, because you have an inner guidance. You do have something that kind of tells you that's not good or that's good. Like
you harm people.
Yes. It's like, it's natural, but we just, we're taught to ignore it in Christianity. We're taught it's evil in there. Don't go in there and look. Which that's where you're going to find the truth. And wouldn't it be more like the divine to hide the truth within you instead of outside of you? So it's inside every single person. You can find it. It's not far from you. That's more divine-like than anything.
It's also an infringement of my relationship with God. So we are always taught that we're supposed to have this personal relationship with God, right? Well, then what is going on with that is between me and God.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, if you're wanting to know where my moral compass is, that it's there.
Yeah.
That it is there.
Yeah.
I don't need, like, I think even Dan McClellan had a video about this a while back that said that, the Bible was basically, it's written by people who were trying to make sense of what they thought God was.
Yes.
That's what it is.
That is what it is.
And we have to use the cultural context there to understand it. That doesn't mean we read it blankly and then interject it into our culture. Also, I struggle with it because that's that's cultural appropriation also, to like that concept of like aligning yourself with,
this was written to me.
Judaism and Israel. And it's not like you can't be part of those, Judaism or within that culture, but they do in a sense like culturally appropriate so that they can wield it and use it to like manipulate. But it's always that grinding down. And it's almost like, and anytime you would probably come back, that they would try to use some whatever. It's always, to me, is a squirrely way to get out of being put on the spot.
Yeah.
Because instead of them being receptive to say, like, explain, well, why, like the Bible, I always pop back and go, okay, show me the scripture that says where the Bible says it is the word of God.
I've tried that one. Yeah.
They can't find it because they don't, it's not there.
They will change the subject very quickly.
Correct. Or talking about, well, what about the contradictions in the Bible, right? Because there are some places that are taken literally, some places that are taken theoretically, and, back and forth. It is this constant renegotiation over and over again, so that can be the one thing that they can use as a weapon. And if you remember, I don't know if you had experience with this, but I'm in the Lord's army.
Oh yeah. I'm in the Lord's army.
It's the sword. They use it to stab people all the time, right? Let me impale you with this. And anytime, like now that I'll go at people, because it's funny out in my community, of course, I've got the mohawk and I have tattoos, and I'll be in various, like, whether it's like, being at rallies or protests or anything of that nature, or even in discourse online, people see me and they make the assumption that I must have a limited understanding of the Bible. Little do they know.
Yeah.
I use a seminary Bible to study.
They're like, huh?
and then no, unfortunately I know this. And not only do I know it now in a way that is removed from certain types of dogma that they have to be bound to in order to get by. I also now have the background of the dogma that they have been.
Yeah, exactly. You know how they,
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how I'll go back to them when they'll go, want to get up at these, like, we've had a lot of things in our community, anti-LGBTQA plus, and they'll get up in these meetings and they want to say, this is against the Bible. And then when I get up to contest it, I'll go, I thought you were supposed to love your neighbor as yourself. Why do you hate yourself so much?
Yeah.
Like, they have no response to that. They're not ready for people who are within their faith. And I think this is people who've deconstructed, whether you've kept your faith or not. We have to be the resistance within our own faith.
Yeah,
because the time is now for us to be critical and hold these people accountable, because our faith was hijacked by politics.
Yeah.
And yes, it could be conceptualized differently. We do not have to have these same theologies in regards to how we want to live, but they have done enough harming, including of us. And right now is the time where it's like, no, this is enough, because it is not that I deconstructed because I lost my faith.
Yeah.
I deconstructed because you told me exactly who Jesus was.
Yeah.
And I left the church because what you were saying was not what you were doing. And it sure as hell wasn't what Jesus did.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then you gaslit the shit out of me to feel bad when I wanted to reach out to the people that I could see humanity in and struggle in my community.
Yep.
And demonize that as falling away.
Yeah.
Because I listened to people that you were actively harming.
Yep.
And that's where I just can't wrap my mind around. I know why we got here. I know how we got here. I just can't believe that this, and I know it's the assumptions, like, our perception, our reality, and how we exist, but it's also one of those things where it's devastating that I put all of my faith in this. I thought this is what it was. And then when I got into it, it was the curtain behind Oz.
But I will say, because that was beautifully said, but I think if we didn't, I've had this thought that all of us that are here on planet Earth are the ones who ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And this is it. This is where we're like trying to figure it out. And I feel like the Bible is an example of the knowledge of good and evil. You can pick good out of it. You can pick evil out of it. You get to decide, and you rightly divide it. You need to learn how to do that's a skill. But had we not gone through that system and kind of grown up in it or been in it in some way, we don't have the tools maybe necessary to actually turn around to them and say, hey guys, there's a way out. There's a way to actually get what you like, follow Jesus out. Like, I feel like I followed Jesus out because I feel like that's where he was leading, is out.
I agree with that. I do feel like, but I feel like that's where we made the choice to do something with our trauma. When I think about often, especially after my diagnosis with ADHD and autism, who would I have been without that trauma?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I could have been what could have been cultivated without. Now, did I take my trauma and do something with it? Absolutely. Yeah. But what about all those people who can't?
Yeah.
What about all those people who, that it destroyed? That it crushed their spirit and then they self-deleted, or it crushed their spirit and they became something. Or what about the people who are in it right now that are actively living their life in complete hate? And I can't help but look at them with empathy, knowing good and well that they live like that because they are so miserable because of how it's been manipulated. And I see what you're saying, because I don't discredit that at all. But there's always a piece of me that goes back to where it's like what fuels my rage.
I know.
That's where like the flipping tables aspect of me is like, I have a shirt that's got, I should have worn it. It's hot pink and it's got a picture of Jesus. My friend made it and it says Jesus would have flipped over this. There's a picnic table.
Oh yeah.
And so like, I sit and think like about that a lot, because I think about that little child who had so much love and to think about that there was this being that cared so deeply. And the reason I was drawn to that was because the beings in my life did not.
I get that.
And it's because they were broken. Who could I have been and what could have existed without that trauma? And I think it's because we are ingrained that struggle has to exist in order for us to learn.
I mean, it does. Contrast has to exist.
I agree that there has to be in communication studies, discourse. Discourse has to exist. But it has been something we've had to get here in order to survive our trauma. And it's so like, I want a future
where they don't have to go. Yes. And I agree. But I think we're just in the timeline where we're still coming out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I think humanity will get there. Yes, exactly.
To me, that's heaven.
Yeah, I agree.
In a timeline or an existence where trauma and violence and pain is not what's wielded in order to force people to be better.
Yeah.
It's some people have to crawl so the next people can walk.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing right now, is just.
And that's our responsibility as people who are deconstructing.
Yes. Something to do. That. Me and Candy being Gen X, we've always been considered this bridge between boomers and millennials because it's a unique generation. We had rotary phones and cell phones. We had handwritten math assignments and we had computers. You know, we were that bridge in between, so we're able to communicate between the boomers and it's kind of, no, you don't understand, millennials. this is what they don't understand this part. So let me explain it from your perspective and translate it. And I think that's what, as deconstruction right now and how it's been blowing up, we're kind of in that spot of, okay, all you people that are still in it, that are coming out now, we're going to tell you what the other side is, and we can try to translate and get you over to it
and also help these people who have never been in it understand where they're coming from, why they would vote for this guy is because they have been brainwashed into this way of thinking. They see the world in a very different way. So they think what they are doing is good. They really do. Yes. But it's not, obviously.
No.
So anyways, I think that might be a good place to wrap it up tonight. And honestly, I think we could probably go for another 5 hours.
Probably like 10 times.
There's a lot of good stuff in here. And it was a great conversation. I've loved. We definitely will have to have you on again.
If you'd like to, because we would definitely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it was. Awesome. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff in there, and we really didn't even get into your background.
She peppered it.
We kind of peppered it in there a little bit. So
which is good too.
We can keep peppering it on the next one and going through that and just kind of dealing with whatever bullshit's coming down the mountain at that time. So
it's hard for me to, even when I was preparing for this, like it was hard for me to like think, I'm like, what is this going to be? I can't help but see everything intertwined.
I know.
Oh, it is.
That's to me, everything is so interconnected.
Yeah,
it's hard. I can't pull. There are aspects that I could sort of pull apart, but like, I don't know about you guys, but like, and I try to keep like away from the chaos because that constant chaos is like I can read your book for there, like heal your nervous system, like right behind you. And so like but I mean that's the nervous system thing, right?
You have to.
And so like talking about this, it's one of those things where like I go outside or go to work and people are just like deer in headlights, grazing or like, cows and like everybody's just like,
they're hypnotized.
and it sucks because like, I feel like our background, our faith has contributed to this. And then it's I can't pull this apart from like where I'm from. The fact that I was raised in a church, one, because those things are, Appalachia, going to church, that's community. Even if people don't believe in God, they still go to church here because it's
community.
I mean, where else you can go to a bar, I guess.
We don't bring all your children in there.
Where you gather a group of people together that sort of might be of like mind, right? And then on top of that, like experiencing the world right now, it's just hard to like, hone in on, you can have it's just, I think too, like, it's like a kickoff conversation because like right now is just so messed up. We have too much connection to how it got here. Because of our faith.
The more we do this, the more we
can't
realize
process
that.
it.
The more different people we've had on and talked to, because we've had people from Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, a witch, spiritualists that
atheists,
do tarot readings, atheists that were very political, weren't very political, and all that. And you just see all the commonality and all the just intertwining of.
It is pulling. I'll give the whole thing with Trump. It's pulling us together in a strange way because we have to, we're like talking about things that are usually like, you don't talk about politics. You don't talk about
out-group now.
And it's like, we're kind of fun. And the community is kind of neat because it's such a mixture of ideas.
Thirst trap lumberjack that.
Fear. What's his name? Thorin.
Exactly.
You know who he is.
I didn't know who he was until a couple of because of like, leading, he was getting like mad about the TikTok ban.
I
mean, I didn't know who he was until like a couple of weeks ago. Of course, every time I see him, I think of that like moment in Step Brothers. Like, she's like lumberjack. Like, I don't know. Like every time, like it's almost like not that he's cartoonish, but it's. I don't sit there. I'm just like, okay, he's chopping wood. Like this makes me, this makes me.
Excuse.
But he's
I
political.
Male brain. I can't control my brain right now. I need to like walk away. I always take his straps down. We gotta get,
he's like political stuff. Like that's just a lot of what he's been having to talk about.
I'm starting to realize that we have become political. Our existence is political. Living anyway in any type of what is deemed as not status quo. And that doesn't even have a definition.
Yeah.
So these people who are in this right now think that they are meeting that expectation until the leopards end up eating their face.
Yeah.
And then they're going to get mad about it.
Exactly. That's going to happen.
And so like, I think that's, like I said, with like COVID, we all leaving Christianity in mass, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but I listened to DC Talk.
I did. Oh yeah. I love DC Talk.
You got members of that, like being like, hey, guess what? We're deconstructing. I'm like, what the heck?
I know.
And that whole like mess with those things. Also, I was going to go to Liberty University.
Ooh.
And then I remember 9/11, like I graduated in 2003. 9/11 happened and Jerry Falwell was like, oh, that happened because of, gay people. And then what happened to him? Massive heart attack.
Yeah.
And so I remember being like, yeah, that probably wasn't a great thing to say. Like,
but that wasn't God. That was the devil. The devil.
Are you really going to say that people who are, existing, that this happened to this country because they existed, but then he got taken out by a heart attack, and you can't tell me, like, if you believe in this, right? And then like years later with his son, right?
Oh yeah.
We have all are getting to a point where we're tired of the things that we were told. And you talked about Gen X. It's because Gen X has ability, and they are the first generation that no longer had to just exist based on what they were told.
Yeah. Yeah.
They fact checked. They had the resources, and then were taught how to go outside of just being told word of mouth. And then now we're all existing in the space that I feel like we're being forced to maintain reality for other people.
Yeah.
But our reality has come tumbling down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where, talking about all of this stuff, it's like I'm verbally processing out loud, probably for like one of the first times that, yes, it happens to be your podcast. My bad. But it's like,
we're a therapy session.
Yes,
it's like, good for us. Yeah.
Having to negotiate and let go of what I thought was where I was. And then having to acknowledge that the entity that I loved and cherished, not God, but I'm saying the church.
Exactly. I know
where I was like found my community was actively harming me, and then is actively harming other people. And then they don't understand that they're being actively harmed themselves.
No, they don't.
And so like standing in that and in the midst of our chaos right now, and then just having to like, I can understand why we've been talking for 2.5 hours, because how does anyone process this in real time?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, this could be a 12-hour conversation.
I mean, it could. We just and all of us that are in it, it's a passionate thing to talk about, because it's, first of all, it's healing for us to talk through it. But it's also like you feel seen, you feel heard, like somebody else understands that we stand in this space where we're looked at as like demons from one side, the side we used to love and be in. And now all of a sudden they think there's something wrong with us. We're on the outside, and that feels we just are perpetually in that space of uncomfortable feeling. We don't fit necessarily anywhere, but we're not supposed to. We're supposed to be authentic. Everybody's just supposed to be authentic and be included, period.
And we can't unknow what we know.
No, we can't.
And that's the struggle. And but I appreciate you guys like inviting me, because, and I would love to be back. It's been awesome. It's a relief to, like, I do have conversations like this all the time. That is my form of resistance.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help people unpack things as quickly as possible, because they have to start. And I'm not trying to convert people. It's not like anything towards that. It's getting them to have conversations, because you can see where people are being harmed and they're struggling.
Yeah. That was
I can't stand to see it anymore.
Exactly.
Our kind of mission with this whole podcast and YouTube was, we just want people to think. We want to put out ideas, thoughts, and agree or disagree. I don't give a shit. Just think about it.
Yeah.
Resonate it. Work it. Process it through and figure it out.
That's the goal. And that the power is inside you, empowering people, because there is power inside every person. I don't care what situation you're in. You have some power. You got to take it back. You got to stop giving it away to people. You have some power. And that is, sometimes people don't like it when I say that. They'll be like, what about someone who's being abused? I'm like, do you want to tell them they're powerless? Like, that doesn't help them. Tell them there is power inside them. They can cry out to, I believe in the spirit that is just, we're all a part of. So like, just cry out. If it's God to you, I don't care what it is, but listen for something that you can do. Is there a way out? Is there something that you can, like, there's power inside you. You cannot just be reliant on somebody outside. You never know when they're going to come and rescue. We need to know that our power is inside.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's basically all we can tell people is think about it. There's something inside you maybe you don't know is there. And I don't know, have those conversations over and over until we die. Because I mean, our goal is just to get them out.
Of any of that, have I ever felt convicted?
Yeah.
Because like you said, I felt like I was following Christ out.
Yeah.
Like, come with me. We
yes,
can't,
exactly.
This is not, we can't exist here.
Yeah.
And so I hope I laid enough breadcrumbs and to remember what it was like to be in there.
Yeah.
In order to help people who it's not just to escape or get out. It's to heal from what's happened. But for me, I feel more of a Christian now than I ever have.
Exactly.
In my life.
Yep. Yep. And that's something that
I totally agree with that.
I've been saying that for a little bit now, that I finally became a Christian after leaving the church.
Yes. Yeah. And then on the way out, having to experience the ridicule and the, being ostracized.
Yeah.
And I would say the persecution of the church.
Which is maybe what Jesus meant when he said, count the cost, take up your cross, follow me. Because when you follow me, there was suffering. There's just suffering and you can't escape it.
Pain, and me and you've talked about it. Maybe that's the rebirth.
I mean, did you not think it felt like it was a death and a resurrection almost of yourself? Like it almost feels like being born again.
I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And life is not the same.
No.
I'm not feeling like God is a kid on an anthill with a magnifying glass. Yeah. And it does, it feels like a rebirth. I actually remember, in the last 4 years, all of those years where we were taught about being saved or, saying the prayer of salvation, if you guys did that or whatever.
Yeah. The sinner's prayer. Yeah.
You will be forever changed. And I remember them constantly talking about you will be made anew. Mm-hmm. And I told my husband just a couple weeks ago, I finally feel like I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
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 Because now, you can't tell me shit.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like that in the sense I'm wrong. It's more like if this is what is good and this is what is right, I'm not going to be bound by the shame of people from the church any longer because their ridicule or gossip or judgment is not what is my sentencing.
Yes.
They're not judge and jury.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like I've been reborn in the sense that to do what Christ called us to do in the New Testament now takes a tremendous amount of courage a tremendous amount of strength because we are now fighting the world, whatever that means, and the church.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is the world, I would say.
Which is the world. And I would even I have family members that are this is what's right. And, this the majority of us, okay, well, Bible all through Christ pretty much said doing the good stuff isn't popular.
Yeah. The majority was
never
do you
think that the majority of anything makes it right? Yeah. And it's just because you have got the acceptance on your side. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do think that us as, deconstructionists or whatever you want to call it, have to unite in the sense of providing that community and support that we would have had in the church, that we were ostracized for wanting to do what they taught us to do while under-resourcing us the entire time. That sounds awfully familiar. And this blaming for it.
Yeah. To bring it back to the beginning, it's like having the coal miners unionize in West Virginia to bring them together because there's powers in the numbers. Mm-hmm. And once people start coming together, and it's the energy, that's why we found you and we found all these other people in TikTok.
Yes.
The energies were aligning. And there's a reason why we've come together and brought together. And as that keeps building and coming together, the group's getting larger and larger and louder and louder and more dangerous.
We have to become the canary in the cave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is that because I think of when Christ, rose, the story of when he rose, and then the angel tells them to go and let everyone know. This is our time that we have to let people know. That's not how Christianity should be executed. That's not a way to live. It's not a way to exist. That's actually not happiness. And it's not because we're out here doing crazy, sinful stuff. In fact, I am way less what would be decided as sinful now than I ever was in the church.
Yeah.
And it isn't because I've, rebuked or like don't think about right or wrong anymore. I do all the time. Yeah. But now it's with an effort to minimize harm, because I want to care about the people around me. Yeah. And so we have to be the canary in the cave, because I still care. It doesn't, even with the harm and even with all of the toxic things, I still care about those people.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because you believe in the oneness. You hurt someone else, that hurts you also.
It just affects everybody. Yeah.
It hurts.
I don't want anyone else to hurt because I had to, which is like, well, I had to do it and you had to. No, I that doesn't have to happen.
That mindset needs to go. Yeah.
It doesn't have to happen just because that's how you had to survive. I don't want people to just have to survive. I want them to thrive.
Exactly.
Yep. And so like that's kind of, where I'm at with it, but I can't untangle it from anything else. It literally touches every aspect of my life.
It does. I agree.
So,
and it's anyway.
It is. Great conversation.
Is there anything you want to promote or put out there? TikTok or whatever?
So my TikTok handle is Appalachian Oracle. Obviously, Appalachians from living in West Virginia. We are the only state that is solely within Appalachia, by the way. That's why we'll use those interchangeably. There's 13 states within Appalachia, but West Virginia is the only one that's like smack dab in the heart of it. Wow. And the concept Oracle came from, I always joked about wizened old Appalachians that always had this wise advice, right? And then kind of combining that with the spirituality aspect of, it's not that I felt like, or at any time feel like people should just always come to me for the answers. It's because I'm always seeking answers. I'm always seeking information, always seeking perspective. And in doing that, I like to share those things, but I never know how that's going to impact other people. But I've realized in sharing those experiences, because they've been so helpful to me, sharing those experiences might be helpful for someone else in ways that I could never imagine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is everything I've always hoped and dreamed of in regards to thinking about how I could be a light for the world.
Yeah.
And it was in sharing my experiences, whether intended or not, in the hopes that even if I could take what I experienced to help other people avoid that pain, and in some way they could use that information to transform their lives, that I have some way in a minor way been part of something that was transformational for them. And to me, I never have to know about it.
Yeah.
That makes that feel exceptional and makes me feel as if I'm living my purpose. And so Appalachian Oracle, that handle came together because I look at my community as a wealth of knowledge, no matter what life experience or where people are. I don't care if they even finished their education. Surviving struggle is far more transferable of a skill outside of this place than people living outside here can transfer their skill in. And it's because we know how to survive. And so it is in honoring my culture that I think I kind of pushed away for a very long time because of the stereotypes about it. But then also acknowledging the wisdom and valuing the people that people do not value. If I want the world to value the people of West Virginia, then I have to start with valuing me. And then I have to then value my community.
Which you naturally will. You naturally will as you value yourself. You'll just naturally value them.
And so that's where that handle came from. It's not in any way of a perspective to say like I am the wisest. Not at all.
Do you live on top of a mountain?
Right. Did you guys see that article? Do you know anything about this?
No.
Oh my God. Okay, I'll say this story and then I promise I'll leave you alone. Our legislature today presented a bill to name the highest point in West Virginia, Spruce Knob, after Donald Trump.
No. Oh gosh.
So you literally just said that, and I'm like, oh man, like seriously, is this national? Like, like another thing. Like we just got rid of Jim Justice, our governor, who is our senator, unfortunately, after he put his baby dog booty hole on national television for the whole world to see. Like that man embarrassed me so badly, and then now they're like, let's name the highest point in West Virginia after a person that doesn't have anything to do with the state, after all his accomplishments.
Wow.
Because he's high? Is that why? I don't know. I question. We have a lot of problems in the state. Like we have people with no running water or no clean water.
And
but you're like,
is
you know what's pressing and we need to spend tax dollars on? Naming the tallest peak in West Virginia after Donald Trump. So it was so funny you just said that.
It's synchronicity.
I'm like, oh my God, do you know about this?
Oh, yeah. I've been studying a lot of West Virginia politics for a while.
You made it to Nebraska? Yeah. Like, they're upset. Like, I know it's flat there. I mean, you may not value mountains like we value mountains.
Oh, we value them. We just don't see them.
Yeah, right. You don't have, like, it makes me a nerve to go to, like, because I obviously go to Indiana because of Purdue. Like, it's so flat there. I feel unsafe. But like, I'm like, I understand like not everybody like views the mountains like us. That's like our safety. It's why we don't have tornadoes.
Yeah.
You know, like the mountains keep us safe from weird things like that. But like, why you're wanting what? What is spruce knob?
That's
I don't know
insane.
If it's the knob part that has to. I don't know what it has to do with Donald Trump.
Yeah. If it was stanky knob.
This is our reality. Yeah. And then why we're talking for 3 hours. It's because like I'm in a chronic state of like spiral. I don't know. Anyway.
Could be.
And on that's all I got to know. Everybody's spiraling. So. Oh, that's crazy. Oh wow.
But that's me on TikTok. I say I do make like somewhat political videos. If it's something that's pressing and I just feel led to talk about it, I just do. Mm-hmm. Which has been so weird because my page isn't huge, but like of late, I talk about a lot of West Virginia things and like get all kinds of like interaction, which is weird, but I think it's because people are just desperate for community. Yeah. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
And people can join me over there and then watch me eviscerate people in the comments because I can't stand it when people are just rude for no reason.
I've seen it often, feared it many times. So, well, for us, just remember the biggest things go up on top of the whatever you're listening on, give us 5 stars. 5 stars, and you'll be blessed and be able to go to Trump's knob, West Virginia.
Trump's knob.
And she's gone.
No, I can't.
I just gave you an idea to go to your legislature. If we're going to name it, we're going to name it Trump's knob. So,
let's get hobnob on Trump's knob.
Gonna slob it.
Hobnob on Trump's. Oh God!
Great. This is like why we're just giving people things to say. Like I'm that makes me mad.
Yeah.
It's
stupid.
It is.
So
it is so dumb. It is the dumbest thing. It's the dumb. Actually, but Jim Justice changed political parties because of Donald Trump. Like none of this is like strong. But anyway, that's just so weird. So, oh my God.
So give us 5 stars and you can slob on Trump's knob and West Virginia. Otherwise, 4 stars or less, and the Oracle will come after you in the comments. We will unleash her on you, and you don't want to be part of that. That's not a good place to be.
I will make sure you hear whistling in Appalachian Woods anytime you come through this area.
Oh, that's the...
You're not safe.
What is that? That's the... who is it? That's one of the...
That's all kinds of things. We've got Mothman.
Well, you have but there's a Whistler one, wasn't there, where you don't turn around?
Oh, you don't. If you hear your name in the woods, you hear any whistling. We have mimics and things like that. You don't.
Yeah, there's.
And it doesn't matter how religious you are, because like we have people here. Does not matter because there's things here. This place is ancient. Like Appalachian Mountains are older than like everything. Okay, like. And anyway, this place is a spooky place. I'm not being weird about it. Like even in my side yard over here. Yes, that's one of those things you don't whistle in the woods. If you hear whistling, you don't whistle back. If you hear your name, you don't say anything. You mind your business.
And keep moving.
You mind your business. Yeah. That's a concept. What?
Yeah.
It's a hell of a concept. Yeah. But it seems we operate too much like white people in horror movies where we just like run straight into the wrong way.
Yeah, run into the chainsaw room.
Like here, you can't do that. You have to be less white.
Yeah.
A little bit. You can't do that. and survive. Like, what the hell?
Well,
Anyway, that's us.
yeah, we don't have any cryptids out here really. So just
Children of the
monsters.
corn. I don't know.
Children of the corn. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and then check out our website, danandcan.com. It's got everything, Drop the Stones, Candy's podcast on there. If you need to relax and get calmed down or want to hear
I want to be non-Christian hypnotized.
it is.
Yes, I can do that.
I want
for
to
you.
do that.
Well, we'll talk
I was like, because
about
I was like, I've been on your website and stuff. And I was like, I want to do that
We'll talk. We'll talk.
Yeah.
in a non-Christian
Yes,
environment.
there's it's definitely no Christian environment.
So check us out there. And it was great having you on again.
Yes,
Thank
really
you
good.
so much.
Definitely will be asking you to come on again because
Yeah.
it's very entertaining and just it's
Good
a lot of
stuff,
good
too.
ideas coming
Yeah.
out of it. So
Yeah.
we enjoyed it thoroughly. But other than that, just remember,
Listen to us.
we got some opinions.
Bye.
Bye.